Welcome to the Bridge Podcast. One of my favorite things about doing this podcast is touching base with old friends. And years ago, I worked with a guy named Hal Bamping. Hal was a natural born leader. He brought me under his wing and he showed me a lot of strategy about leadership that I didn't even have a concept of before. And the interesting thing about Hal is, of course, he is that natural leader, but like everything else, it was formed through years of a long life, through moving out of his house when he was 16 years old, through going away to work in the oil fields when he was 18 years old. You know, he's a third generation homesteader. That means they built the roads going into town. Just neat stories that you're going to hear from Hal. And he's also going to touch base on the essentials of leadership. And he might even throw in a tip about how to survive an earthquake if you're climbing to the base camp at Everest. So welcome. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome, Hal Bamping. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Dan, how's it going?
It's going well, man. It's going well. Been a lot of years since we actually worked together.
Absolutely. I miss those days.
Yeah, we had some fun. That's for sure. Did you? You've been busy lately, but let's get to, just because I know you, but I want my audience to know you. So I'm going to ask you questions for them. Essentially, I'll be asking you questions. For them. So
how far down the rabbit hole do we want to go?
Well, so I met you at Carmen Creek when we were working for Shell together, and by the time I met you, you were a lead on the project, and you were in senior management, and I just found you to be one of those people that not only I wanted to follow, because as an old football player, I want to know who are my mentors, and I'm not just trying to blow smoke. That's how I felt about you right away. I'm sure I've told you this personally, and so I guess I'd like to know though, what brought you to that level of leadership where you're actually one of the guys that's helping run a major project. And I mean, obviously we can talk about some of the soft skills and some of the hard skills later, but tell me about where you came from. I know small town Alberta, but hit me from Peace River.
Many failures. I wasn't that smart, so I learned the hard way most of the time, Dan. So I grew up, and I am actually third generation on my property. I bought it from my parents, which my grandfather homesteaded in a small town called Peace River. We were on a farm, and we didn't have any money. So you worked and you fixed, and safety was something we didn't discuss. So we seen many incidents, and we seen many ways how to work hard, maybe not so smart. And it was just the generations, and it was where we were. I was very lucky early in life. Let me back up a bit. I moved out when I was 16 because I knew everything.
Let me ask you something first. Your great grandfather homesteaded. Like homesteading a property in Peace River, Alberta. For anybody that doesn't know where Peace River, Alberta is, you're pretty far north up there, man. The winters are cold. They don't get much colder. You know.
Yeah. So my grandfather was born in Perm, Minnesota, and he made his way to Saskatchewan because his mother moved there. And then when he was old enough, he was looking for land. Well, in Alberta, in the early teens, they were giving land away. So there was an area in Alberta, Peace River area, where you could pretty much get land for free if you cleared so much of it. And so he made his way. And I don't know all the story. Unfortunately, he was passed fairly young in my life, so I didn't get all the stories. But I was fortunate; they had a Super 8 camera, so I have a ton of video from the 30s, 40s, 50s. Where I am now is I'm 3 kilometers off the pavement. And when I was growing up, that was about 18 kilometers from the town of Peace River. And they cleared the road. And I can remember growing up, our home quarter, there was dirt roads heading east of me. And my grandfather, and as my father got older, they cleared at pretty much 6 quarter sections around us. And they built it from scratch. I've got a barn in my yard that was built in 1918 that we're trying to preserve, but it was built as soon as the homestead was made. And I played it. My father played in it as a kid, and it was functional. I played in it and made forts upstairs, and it was functional. Then my kids and now my grandkids are all playing in this old barn still.
That's amazing.
It is pretty cool.
Well,
So
you blew my mind at clearing the roads. They cleared the roads. They built the roads going into town, and that was probably part of how they owned. They needed the roads, just
absolutely,
necessity. Yeah,
absolutely.
like,
There,
what do
there,
you
there
do when you don't
was.
have roads? Well, you build
Yeah,
them.
you ride horseback, or you cut a bit of a road, and you can take whatever vehicle you got, right?
Right on, right
So
on.
yeah, it's that's kind of how I where we got here, and hopefully someday one of my daughters will take over the property. So
Yeah,
kind of
well,
cool.
that's right. That's exactly right. And then nobody know. Well, people from Peace River know this, but Peace River is actually a beautiful area. Like there's a beautiful valley. It's a gorgeous piece of scenic Alberta that if you don't get up there and see it, you wouldn't know. So your great grandfather made a great move back in the day.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we have so many resources that most people don't know. We have a wonderful river and beautiful valleys, and it is amazing. The summers are wonderful. Winters, not so much.
Yeah,
It
you gotta.
gets a little cold. Those days when it's 40 below, we're not having a
Yeah,
lot of fun.
no, no. I didn't like spending a lot of time outside, but we had to get our boots on the ground sometimes, just they're always frozen.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so then from so a young man at 16 years old, you sorry I interrupted you.
Oh no,
You
that's fine. That's fine. I at 16, I had come to the peak of my knowledge and I knew everything, so I
yes.
moved out. And I moved in with actually in a 3-bedroom townhouse that had an unfinished basement in with 7 guys. And we finished the basement. We made it into rooms with sheets. So there was 7 guys, all pretty much older than me. I was the only one in high school still. They were all working out. So there's rarely more than 3 of them in town. And that's how I went to school and I got a job at a pizza joint and I graduated somehow. I'm not sure. It was pretty blurry.
I like
Um,
how you said you finished the basement with sheets.
yeah, yeah. That's how our rooms were. Right? They're partitioned off, soundproof sheets.
That's right. That's right. That'd be more rough than a lot of people know how to live nowadays. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And somehow I graduated through that. Right out of high school, I went and I started working in seismic because that's where there was work. And I was with Driller's Helper, and I did that for 2 winters. And then we just took the summers off, myself and my buddy Brent. One summer we took off, we got back from the bush, and I'd actually I went in December 26th. I flew out to Calgary, picked up the rigs, and we drove all the way to Fort Liard, which is the middle of nowhere, and I worked until May 6th without a break. So it was like 100+ days, right? When I came back and seeing society again, I was like, oh my God, I'm not prepared for this. I'm used to only the 22 people that we had at the camp.
Right.
And it was a reality check. Anyways, my buddy Brent, he said, hey, let's go to California. So we took off to California. We're going for 2 weeks. And about 8.5 weeks later, we got back. And we were broke. We had to go back to work again.
That's amazing. So I gotta ask you, man. Like you moved out when you were 16, so now you're 18, 19. You must have rebuilt that relationship at some point. Did you get?
Oh
I
yeah,
know you.
my dad and I always got along really well. My mom and me clashed because we're both fairly headstrong.
Yes.
Um, no, yeah, my actually my dad, when I came home from the bush there at the time, I had he found me because we had been partying and having a few pops for a week in the
Yeah.
bar. He come and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I heard you're in town." I was like, "Oh yeah." So he said, "Come for breakfast." So I went for breakfast with him, and he said, "Well, how much did you make this winter?" And I think if I remember right, it was $52,000. I came home, and his eyes popped, and he's like, "What? Are you crazy?" He said, "I've never seen that much money." Poor farmer back then in the 70s and early 80s, he never seen money like that. He goes, "Well, we're gonna go buy you something." And I went, "What?" He goes, "You need to go buy a house." So we went and bought this little house that I paid $30,000 for, and I never even moved in until we came back from California 2 months after that. Well, he said, "You're just going to party this all away." I told him we were going to California. He said, "No, go buy a house." So we went and found this. Today you'd call it a crack shack, but it was, a fixer upper. And yeah, so anyways, that's how I kind of got that. So when we were broke and came back, we had a place to live. I did that for 2 winters and summers off, pretty much. A little bit of carpentry work, and then I applied for a jail at corrections. So
Oh,
Peace River has a medium security jail and looking for stability a little bit, right? And lo and behold, they hired me as a jail guard. So that was really my first real introduction to structure and really safety as far as their protocols on how they had to deal with the way gates got open, how they had to deal with individuals and different types of situations. We always had protocols on what ifs, and, a lot of planning ahead, right? So yeah, I did that for 11 months.
Must have changed who you were in terms of talking to people. Like now you've got to deal with authority, and then on top of that, you've got to deal with people who are under your authority.
Well, with me at the time, a lot of the guards were people that were trying to go up in the world in the corrections department. So they're trying to be either RCMP or city police or something like that, and they hadn't quite got there. And unfortunately, some of them had quite a chip on their shoulder, and they didn't always treat the inmates the way I thought they should be. I treated them just like me or a buddy or you or whatever, and I had no grief at all. But it did change the way I looked at things, and it did change my perspective on a lot of the way things can get done, right? I came from a background, as you know now, from really farming with basic structure and very little process built into it. Then I went to seismic drilling rig that was, let's get her done at any cost. So I didn't really look. I can remember, I'm going to go back to the seismic. So when you drill a hole down, then what you do is you grab, because we're in Fort Liard, 6 kgs of dynamite that you screw together, and then you push it down a hole and you use sticks. I can remember many times, because you're flying, you're doing 36 of these holes a day. I can remember taking the 6 kgs of dynamite with the cord and flicking it into the snowbank as I'm cleaning the pipe out of there before I stick it down. So safety wasn't discussed. Although my driller was really good, he said, pay attention. He said not to blow yourself up. But
well, that's nice. That's a thoughtful individual, man. Safety first.
But when I look back, I go, holy crap, that was crazy, because we didn't. I treated it poorly, and I got very lucky. So when I went to the jail, there was none of that. This is kind of how you do it, and let you figure it out along the way. There was processes and steps, and you know what? I really liked that, and I looking back, I guess it helped me seek for a different job that had that. So what I did is, after 11 months, I hated the schedule. It was a 6 days on, 3 days off, and you only worked 8-hour days. Mm-hmm. At 8-hour days, you've got 3/4 of the day left. I'm a guy that until I was probably 50 years old, I didn't need more than 4 hours sleep. And so what are you going to do, right? So I didn't like the schedule, and I didn't like the wages. So I applied at actually Shell Canada, and I got an entry-level position that gave me the ability to train on the job as a power engineer, and then I had to write a test and go to school and all that. So then I moved over to Shell, and they had lots of structure at that time. They weren't over the top, but they were well-based. They had my and other workers' needs at the forefront, and it felt right.
Yeah, I can say that honestly about Shell, and I think if you've worked for them, especially out there, even when I was there, and we were together, what was that, 2010 to 15, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
They were over the top about being there for their employees. I mean, the camp that we had was insane. The gym was great. The rooms were great. Everything was so clean. The food was amazing. I used to go there and get healthy, between stitches coming home, because you go there and it was decent. It was all good.
That's right. Well, Shell's problem when they were in Canada, or from my perspective, is they took it to such the 11th degree that they become not functional. They could barely do work, and it just wasn't feasible for them to continue. But you know what? I have to. They've got me. I worked for them twice. So I worked for Shell, and I got my power engineering from. I think I started with them in '85, and I stayed with them till just early 1990, and I left them for an opportunity to go overseas, and they trained the heck out of me. And then I decided that with life, and I had my first daughter, Shelby, and I decided that I was just getting out of a relationship, and that I was going to go and do a big change and make some crazy money working overseas, right? Which which it
Yeah.
was. So I went to a small Italian company, and I worked in Libya, and it was really good money. It was fabulous money. But again, going there, my head must have been in the clouds because I don't think they even knew the word safety. Like
Right.
it was absolutely crazy. And
So what
again,
position were you there?
it was like I don't even, it was like a foreman or a manager. And what I did
Right.
was I was supposed to train Libyans and Tunisians how to run vibration equipment or seismic equipment and a small treating facility for light oil, which, you know, was a very basic free water knockout and a treater, and it was real simple. But the problem was, well, there was a bunch of problems, but uh, I had about 16 to 18 guys. Out of all of them, only two had been to school, and the highest level of education they've been to was grade 2.
Wow.
So the basic, what you would think that just, and it wasn't because they're dumb. That wasn't it at all. It just, they didn't know how to learn. They just were so out of their element that we were going back to the basics. The first 3 weeks I was there, I was just training 3 guys to drive the pickup, so I didn't always have to go get it because it was a long ways in between our areas, right? And they did learn how to swear, unfortunately, in English quite well.
That comes first usually.
Yeah, well, it, when you're frustrated, a few words come out, and
So
they
the first
picked right up
English
on that.
words were not the ones that we're using today.
Well, and the other thing is, when I went over there, they told me a couple things. They told me that they speak English, the people that I'd be working with. Well, yeah, the couple of the foremen did speak English, but nobody I was working with directly. They all knew Arabic. So I quickly found this guy. I did this a long time ago, so I think it was, we called him Hajj Bashir, so respectful Bashir. And I said, you know, he spoke about 20 words of English, and I said, you teach me Arabic in the morning, and I'll teach you English in the afternoon. And I said, let's go for it. So I learned crude Arabic enough that I could get my point across.
Wow. Well, that could be part of the teaching problem.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
was tough. Well, and the other part is I was supposed to be out there for 6 weeks and home for 3 weeks, and on the 6th you're supposed to travel. So it was really a 6 and 4 schedule.
Yeah.
The shortest shift I did was 12 weeks because your relief would never show up.
Oh, good.
So, and a couple of them I did 16 weeks straight, and then you get your 3 weeks off. And although again, the money was great, but after, you know, not just about, 2 years of that, I went, enough's enough. I needed some home life because, again, I said I had a young daughter at the time. It was not a good move overall.
No.
But
Well, learn a lot, but you miss those times with your kid. That's with Shelby, right? Like that's tough.
exactly. You know what I learned there more than anything?
What's that?
Patience. Patience.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I guess you would have.
you couldn't get excited, and there was no equipment there. And if you wanted to order anything, it was a month, and you had to order double because the when it came into port or it came into Libya, there was a 50% tax on everything. So by their 50% tax, it was, they take half of what you order.
Wow. That is a
and
50% tax.
So if you wanted some tools and stuff, or you wanted equipment or a welder or anything, you had to order two because one was always gone.
Yes. Yes. That's we think things are tough here sometimes. And
well, you know, I was exposed to some pretty bizarre things there. You know, I was there through the Gulf War. Not that they were involved in the Gulf War, but when you're traveling into, at the time, an Arabic country when the Gulf War was on, it was unpleasant traveling. You got tore down everything and wanted to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And when you land in Libya, they had spray painted all the signs. They said if America invades, they didn't want them knowing where to go.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, and when I was
done
there,
in the Second World War, right? Like France.
That's right.
Everybody did that. Like that's what you do.
That's right.
In case you're wondering if anybody attacks, that's the first
That's
move,
right. We don't want them doing directions.
That's right.
And one of the other really things that was a real reality check for me, every expat that was leaving there at the time you could fly out had to go by Green Square. And one of the time, the Green Square is where they did corporal punishment. So one of the times we went through, there was 7 guys that were actually hanging in Green Square, and all the drivers had to take you through where they would have been thrown in jail. So that was I'd never experienced anything like that, right? In our times, when would you ever experience something like that? But they all were charged and found guilty of drug smuggling at the time in Libya, and that's where they met their end.
It's amazing. That goes back to Roman philosophy, right? Like that's set the example in the town square.
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
then you had your time overseas. You came back home. You got back together with your daughter. But so after you're overseas, what'd you do?
I came back and I actually got a job with a pulp mill, and it was DMI. It was a pulp mill. It was a good place to work. It was extremely convenient for me because they had built it while we were gone, and they were just starting it up. So I got a job as a lead or as an operator, power engineer, and I worked there for 11 or 12 years. Um, some things happened along the way at that place that because I kind of started heading towards safety during the pulp mill times. Um, a couple of things that had changed me along the way also is when I forgot to mention this, when I was about 18 years old, one of my best friends was killed because I used to drive like a haywire crazy man, right? I had 2 speeds on and off, and my best friend Ken was killed in a vehicle accident, and I was with him shortly before that and stuff like that. So that really changed me. And for how I kind of looked at, well, how much risk do I want to take on that avenue, because we were
Mm-hmm.
drinking, of course, and partying and stuff like that. So it kind of changed. And then at the pulp mill, the first few years was great, and then we were doing the startup and commissioning of some equipment, and I heard the squealing of belts. So I'm with my flashlight and I'm looking out in the area, and it's all new and it's my area and I'm learning it, and I hear this squealing, and all of a sudden I just bang, I get knocked to the ground, right? And I'm like, what the heck? And I get up and there's black liquor. Do you know what black liquor is, Dan?
No.
Okay, you know what caustic is?
Yeah. But explain
Okay,
it though, please.
so
Explain it
it's
for the
it's
yeah.
a it's a mixture of caustic and water, and it's pretty much at a boiling point. So what it does is it breaks down the fiber. So, anyways, this piece of equipment that was built was poorly designed, and the overflow was about 14 feet in the air. And what was happening is it had been spitting out and spraying on a different piece of equipment, making the belt squeal. So I didn't see the big picture. I didn't step back and assess my situation. I just
Right.
went, I heard squealing. I was focused. I was tunnel visioned. I didn't look at the big picture, right? So I went in with my flashlight and it was squealing, and all of a sudden, boom, this thing overflows, and it put about 150 gallons of this boiling black caustic on me. So I hit the ground. I'm laying there and I get up and I'm like, holy shit, things are not feeling good. So I've got to get my coveralls off because it feels like I'm burning. So I pull my coveralls off and I pull my shirt over my head. And I'm like, what the hell's on my ears, right? I'm going like this. And here I realize that it's my skin off my back. I had
Wow.
I had burnt the first layer of the skin off my back. So I was like, oh, now I'm in trouble. So I made my way to the safety shower, I grabbed my coveralls, and I grabbed the radio, and I called protection, which was the safety and protection department, and they called it. And I said, hey, man, I'm in a bad way. I need help. And I'm on this pulping floor or whatever it was. And so the guy Brad come and help me. And he goes, it's bad when the safety and the protection and the EMT guy goes, oh my God, that's bad, Hal. And when I was in the safety shower, he didn't instill a lot of confidence. He's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I was lucky then. I got out of there and I went down to where their office was, and they got me in a shower as well, and they called the ambulance. And then
So
I got
what's a
to hang out.
shower like when you've got probably 3rd-degree burns? You must have had
Oh,
3rd-degree
very,
burns.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty unpleasant. Yeah,
I bet you it was, but they
yeah,
had to do
pretty.
it to disinfect.
Yeah, and at that point, I can honestly say I went into shock, and it's pretty blurry what happened at that point.
Yeah.
Mind wasn't functioning really that straight, other than, okay, now I've got someone that can watch me if I fall over here.
So
Um,
you got knocked down by the actual liquid.
Oh yeah,
100,
yeah,
150 gallons of boiling caustic.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Wow.
that was a bad day.
Not a good day. No, that's
Well, the days that actually wasn't as bad as the next 6 weeks though, because do you know what happens when you burn yourself?
I do, but talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. You lay in your belly in the hospital, and then each day they take this little scrub brush and they have to get rid of the dead stuff, and they kind
Yeah.
of rub your back, and it's not a good time. It is very unpleasant. I was fortunate though. They had this product, and I'm gonna make it wrong. My daughter's at our end; she'll beat me up for it. But it's called Flamazine, I think. And it was, back in the day, and this was in the early '90s. It was a jar about this big, and it was still $200. And they would just put that on, and it was just like heaven death. It would take all the pain away. And fortunately, I have very little scarring. When I tan, I've got some zebra stripes, but
Hmm.
it's not bad at all. And that products, the healthcare took care of me and did a heck of a job. So I think I was off for like 9 or 11 weeks before I went back to work. So after that, I started going, whoa,
Hmm.
that was my fault. You know what? Yes, it was a design flaw. Yes, it was the engineering and the commissioning guys that didn't see that hazard. But I walked blatantly into there. Like, it might as well have been a flaming building because I did not look at situational awareness at all. So that really made me do some reflection and go, what am I doing? So I quickly joined the safety department, or the safety group. We had a task force in the pulp mill, and I started becoming active and involved in that. And I worked my way up to chairman on that. And I took a bunch of training, root cause analysis, Robert Nelms, a bunch of different courses that kind of get me up to speed. And yeah, so that's kind of how I started my safety journey, Dan.
It's funny because some of these things we talked about a little bit over a beer back in the day, but it makes a lot of sense now because I mean I did know about the injury, I do remember that, but
Right.
it's how do you get a guy who's by the time I met you and you were my boss for a while, how do you get a guy who's a complete gas freak? I mean, anything running, you're speeding. We were doing, trips down the river in your boat, and it's a speedboat. And we're flying along, and you taught me how to ride a motorcycle. If we're going to be honest, right? Sold me my first motorcycle.
Can we
How to
talk
get
about that later?
how is well, I probably thought you were going to probably bring it up, so I thought I'd give you an opening. But how does this the guy who's actually you cared so much about safety even back like you cared so much about safety by the time I met you that it was not a joke and it was never negotiable and at the same time you were practical. You were always
Right.
practical, right? We weren't covering everybody in bubble wrap and saying I don't care if the job gets done. It was how do we get these guys to get the job done? How do we help them? How do we help them finish this?
Right.
So,
Because everybody wants to go home, right? Everybody wants to not be affected because somebody took a shortcut.
yeah, yeah.
You know, that's the biggest thing. And I think we make things so complicated, Dan. I don't think they're getting better. Let me rephrase that. We are safer than we ever have been in the industry, but we make things really complicated. And unfortunately, and this is one of my pet peeves, paper does not make you safer.
That's right.
Conversations do. Actually understanding, I still to this day, I consult to a pipeline company, and I go out there, and I always I look for the youngest guy or the oldest guy, right? I have a conversation with them, and the old guys are always grumpy because they got to fill out the FLRHA, the field level hazard assessment, and they're like, "Oh, I got to do this, I got to do this, and another." And, I said, "Well, let me have a look on it." And he said, "Well, yeah, my boss says I got to fill out both sides." I said, "You know what?" I said, "I disagree with that. You don't have to fill out both sides." I said, "What applies to you?" I said, "You don't have to just write drove to work, was safe." I said, "What value does that add?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Tell me what you've seen on the road. Tell me some of the hazards. Tell me how you address it." Because there's not a piece of road that you don't see a hazard. And I said, "How you mitigate it and share with your workers." And so I start talking with them, and then the young guys. Oh, there's some that are really enthusiastic, some not so engaged. And again, I just try to get them to start thinking about what could happen and why they're actually looking at safety. And it's a good journey. Most times I feel really rewarded coming back from work 99% of the time.
So thank you for that story. That's great, and it brings me to another question. So your position now, are you in a leadership position that is a safety leadership position, or are you in a management position? Where are you
I,
bringing this knowledge from for the people?
I am I'm in a very unique position. I think is senior safety advisor, safety integration. So I work with commissioning startup process. I sit on as a subject matter expert. I sit on most of the design review meetings, and the rest of my job, I go out to the field and I work with the operations individuals, the supervisors. I work with project managers on the sites, and I coach and I mentor and I learn, and we have pretty much dropped the walls between them and us. It is way smoother. We got a couple other guys that are involved that are on the same page as me, and I have the best job ever right now. It's awesome, and I get treated really really well. Um, I as a contractor, I never thought I'd be treated this well. I had a bit of an issue a couple of years ago, Dan, and I'm kind of going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but
Yeah.
um, I started losing weight, and this was in like 21, and I started going to sleep all the time, and I'm like, oh man, this old age sucks, right? And I went to the doctor, and she said, "Well, no, it's you're COVID. You had a COVID." And I said, "Well, no, I didn't. I tested for COVID." Anyways, this went on in months and months. Anyways, I ended up by the beginning of September, I got pissed off because I was down like 30 pounds. I couldn't stay awake past noon. And finally went in there. I said, "You got to do something. I'm dying here, right? I look like a skeleton." And lo and behold, she sent me to the specialist, and I went to Grand Prairie, and he stuck a scope. Or first off, they checked my heart with imaging camera. And he said, "Oh yeah, there's a problem." He said, "You got to come back." So I just got home, which is 2 hours from me, and I just got home, and the specialist called me. He goes, "You got to be here Monday morning." He said, this was Saturday. He said, "You got to be here Monday morning at 7. And there's a problem." So, oh, okay. So I went and worked in the yard until noon, and then we drove to Grand Prairie, and I was too tired. I couldn't do it. So, which me, I love driving. Linda ended up having to drive to Grand Prairie. My wife of 31 years, by the way. We get there and we hotel it, and then we're there at 7 and going to the doctor, and he sticks this tube down my throat to check my heart. And he pulls it up, and he looks at me. He goes, "How did you get in here?" And I went, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "How did you get in here?" And he said, "Oh yeah, can you talk?" Because he had froze my throat. And I said, "Yeah, I can talk." I said, "Well, I walked in here." He said, "You told me to come in." He goes, "There's no way you should have." He said, "You should have had a heart attack or a stroke." He said, "You've got like 40% of the blood flow, maybe less, flowing." He said, "You're missing out of your 3 flappers on your aortic valve." He said, you're missing 2 of them. He said, "You've got some sort of bacteria eating your heart away." So I went, "Oh." He goes, "Yeah, you're going to have to go to the Heart Institute in Edmonton, which is, one of the best in Canada." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Do we, we'll go pack up and when do we head out?" And he looks at me, he says, "You don't understand." He said, "I don't think you have 2 days to live." He said, "You're flying now." He said, "I'm not sure if you're going to make the flight." Now there is a reality check.
Yeah.
There's so they flew me out. I got the best of care. I got to pick what kind of heart valve I wanted. So I am now very closely associated to a bovine. So when I see grassy and alfalfa fields, I kind of slow down now. And
part cow.
Yeah, exactly. And anyways, long story short, I was able to recover. I had great support, and as the company I'm working for, they were one of the first ones to call my family, and you want to talk about personal care and commitment to your workers. They called and said, "Listen, anything you need, we're there. Just call." And they called Linda, and they called my daughter, my youngest daughter, Sabrina, and Shelby, and said, "Hey, if this needs anything, he needs anything, just let us know." And my
Amazing.
point is that's how you get commitment from employees or contractors. You give a shit, right? And they went above and beyond, and I'm still there to this day. I went back, I eased in, and I'm back, and now I'm working. I work only probably, I'd say, half or three-quarter of the hours of a normal week, but it's just that's all I want to. I'm old, so that's
How are
all
you
I want.
feeling? How's your health now? Since the
Uh,
surgery, since everything?
it's
I,
really good. It's
I
really
mean, I'll
good.
understand if I ask you that question, but I got to take it with a grain of salt because you're walking around with a dead heart for 2 days. Well, how many weeks? So that's pretty good. You be
You know
sitting
what?
there on one leg. I don't know. I mean,
I'm whining because I'm slowing down, but you know what 60-year-old guy doesn't, right?
yeah,
But I can still stay ahead of my 13-year-old grandson on his dirt bike when we're dirt biking. I'm back dirt biking now.
awesome.
Where Linda and I rode our Harleys. I had to do some work in Terrace, BC, and then we took our Harleys there, and we rode up to Hyder, BC, or pardon me, Hyder, Alaska, and we rode our Harleys up to Salmon Glacier, and so I'm still doing okay. We're still jet boating.
You're still
I'm
living, man.
yeah, we're still having a good time.
Okay, so crazy question. Not to get too deep, but yeah, we're gonna get deep. So you're in the you said you had to take a helicopter from Grand Prairie to Edmonton, or did they take you in an ambulance?
Plane.
Plane. So you're in the plane and you're
Yep,
flying, and this guy just told you, you're in tough shape here. You might have 2 days to live. What's going
yep.
through your mind?
What's going through my mind is I'm a guy that I live and breathe to burn gas. I like bikes. I like cars. I like boats. I race land speed. I've raced jet boats. I have a 40 by 60 shop that has 3 hoists, that has 5 projects in my shop. My biggest thing, what I thought was, man, I'm leaving a shit show for Linda and the girls to have to deal with. Um, it was so quick, Dan.
Amazing.
I wasn't scared for myself because at that point you have days to live, and this is option A. So I had no time to think about it. I had no time to process. It was just, oh, how are they going to deal with it if I don't make it? Right? Because we have 15 acres here. What's not in my shop, I have another 15 cars outside. Linda tells me I have really good systems, but I make them really complicated, and only I can know how to turn the water on and how to run the greenhouse and how to do it. I think they're simple, but apparently they're not. That was the biggest thing, is how am I going to leave my family and what kind of mess?
Yeah.
And I was fortunate I didn't have to do it. Now I've come home and I've remedied quite a few of those things. I have got more organized, and I think I got rid of a few of the projects. So it's getting better. We're making it leaner. We're making it better. And yeah, it was an odd feeling. I'd come across some near death experiences before, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been in
Right.
I've been in floods. I've been in forest fires. Uh, I've been in earthquakes. Yeah,
Yes,
I've been in
that's the one I want to
earthquakes.
talk about. Actually, yeah. Let's. That's a good segue. Actually, I'm number one. Before we do that, though, I'm very glad you made it. It's good. It's good. You're a
Thanks.
guy. You're a guy that we need around. So I'm glad you made it. That's
Thanks,
I
bud.
love the story. I have a picture of you that I'm going to use for this